Tales from the Darkside, Season 1, Episode 16, The Tear Collector. Very interesting episode that actually strikes an interesting balance. Typically, most Tales from the Darkside episodes are either horror, thriller, suspense, kind of in that category, or on the whole other left side, goofy comedy episodes that typically are not very funny. This one strikes an interesting balance between the two, though. It actually leans into drama, and I think does it pretty well. We will read some reviews after I do my review, because this is a really polarizing episode. A lot of people really hate it because it is in this kind of in-between. It's not super scary, but it's done very, very seriously as well. The main character is a woman named Prudence, who is a little emotional. She cries a lot. The episode starts with her getting a sort of attempted robbery by this homeless guy. She's able to get away, but immediately, emotional, understandably, she runs into this guy named Ambrose, and he is a tear collector. He starts, well, you think he's hitting on her, but really he just wants her for her tears. He tells her, her tears are beautiful, they're magical, please come into my room and let me take your tears.
Your tears are beautiful. What? There's so much sadness in the world.
While this would probably not work, like if you just went up to a woman on the street and asked if she could come over to your place so you can take some of her tears, Prudence actually likes the tear collector and kind of falls in love with him and is initially attracted to him, so she actually agrees to this. As a rarity in this series, we have both characters played by very famous and good actors. The main character, Prudence, is played by Jessica Harper, who was in 2 Woody Allen movies, Love and Death in 1975 and Stardust Memories in 1980. She was also in Minority Report, but none of that matters because she was in one of the best horror movies ever, 1977's Suspiria, directed by Dario Argento, where she was the main character, Susie, taking place in a German ballet academy that is run by a coven of witches. And with Suspiria's nightmarish imagery and well-thought-out murders, it is one of the greatest horror movies ever made, and one of my favorites, and that's why it was a joy to see her in this episode. The other character, the Tear Collector, was played by Victor Garber, who played the character Ambrose, the Tear Collector. He was in James Cameron's Titanic, and is still acting, appearing in The Flash and 16 episodes of Power. These two actors really carry the show, Prudence falling in love with the Tear Collector, and the Tear Collector, well, he only wants her for her tears, and nothing else, at least at first. Intrigued by the tear collector, she decides to meet him at his apartment, and we see the main set for this episode, and it looks pretty cool. There's a door that goes off into this tear room that we'll see later. Kind of looks like a psychologist's office. He has her lay back in this chair, and then he collects her tears. He tells her, just give me a good cry. And she actually feels very cleansed after this. Really, both sides are getting exactly what they want. He's getting these amazing tears, and she actually feels better after crying, and he also actually pays her. There's a funny part halfway through the episode where her friend, who knows that she's going to this tear collector's office all the time and seems to really like him, finds a bunch of cash in the drawer, and she thinks she's like prostituting herself. And Prudence tries to explain, it's like, no, he's just paying me for my tears, I swear. She's like, yeah, sure, whatever. She thinks she's like a sugar baby. Ambrose collects her tears in this glass bottle that's shaped like a swan, and explains that once this vial is full, she will be happy and free forever. He finally trusts her enough to let her into his tear room, which he describes as the chamber of ancient sorrows, and describes how he's been collecting tears all throughout the centuries, and goes through some of the vials and explains where they came from. He shows her one vial and explains that it's from an Aztec warrior. He shows her another and explains it's from the mother of a Confederate soldier who died during the war. Seems like Mr. Ambrose, despite looking around 30 in this episode, has been around for hundreds of years. And unfortunately, this episode, while I do like it, the payoff on this episode doesn't exactly explain what he's up to. She goes to see the tear collector and just wants to talk to him and get to know him better. Ambrose acts kind of like a robot this entire time, always talking like this, please cry for me. But we do see a little bit of crack in his armor as he does kiss her. This, of course, induces tears out of her, so maybe he didn't enjoy it, but I don't know. I watched this episode closely. I think he kind of liked kissing her. And up to this point, the drama is pretty good. She's kind of falling in love with him. He's sort of falling in love with her too, I guess you could say. But I don't know if they just run out of time or just realize, hey, maybe this is the Tales from the Darkside. We need to up the energy here and have something crazy happen. Because, as I mentioned before, the ending is pretty unfulfilling. If you're going to have an episode called The Tear Collector, where that's all he talks about the entire time, it's important to let the audience know why exactly is he collecting these tears. And specifically, he talks about how powerful her tears are and how much better they are than other people's and how much more special they are. So you'd think we get a reveal of what exactly he means by that. Can her tears cure cancer or something like that? After filling up the vial with her tears, Ambrose lets her know that he doesn't want to see her anymore. He got what he wanted, and she no longer has to come by. He doesn't want to talk to her anymore, and he doesn't want to see her anymore. This, of course, makes her very angry. This is a woman scorned. And I think they're trying to do some type of parallels of men using women for sex. I mean, there's a lot of kind of undercurrent of sexual innuendo, and this kind of hilarious scene where she is running out of his house and says, "You only wanted me for my tears." And then she runs out.
I understand. All you ever wanted was my tears.
Your tears are all I can take from you.
But, as I said before, we still don't know why exactly he wants these tears. God, I'm tired of saying that word, tears. And what exactly they do. Why are they powerful? What can they do? We never learn this. So she runs out. She kind of wrecks the place, takes her tear bottle, and then she actually gets a good ending and meets a guy who, unlike that bad Ambrose, who's good looking but a jerk and only wants her for her tears, this guy actually wants to get to know her better and take her on an actual date. So yeah, I think they're doing some parallels to one night stands and sex, but man, a little bit of an unsatisfying ending. So I think I'm going to give this episode a low 6 out of 10. I do actually like the drama aspect. Both characters do a really good job. Even Ambrose, who's kind of a machine the entire time. You can kind of see why she's attracted to him. Alright, let's look at some reviews. This guy gave it a 5 out of 10. No explanation to any of the confusing elements ruined what could have been a great episode. What a great point. Who wrote this? I'm fine with open-ended endings, leaving portions of stories to the imagination, but this episode is just ridiculous. It's like the writer came up with an interesting premise and a couple good characters and just ended the writing there. Prudence is one of Darkside's deepest leads. I agree, she does a pretty good job. And Ambrose is one of the show's most mysterious antagonists. I guess you can call him that. So why were they put in such an unfinished episode? The tacked-on ending made no sense either, and I'm quite confused on how this end relates to anything that previously happened. This episode is entertaining, but ultimately vague, frustrating, and confusing. Maybe an extra 5 minutes would have added some to the plot and stretched this into a good episode. Yeah, I mostly agree. Though I think the ending kind of makes sense. She finds a guy who actually doesn't just want her for her tears and actually treats her well, and he's just kind of a normie-looking guy. But what that has to do with her tears and why they're special and what Ambrose wants to do, I don't know. I like the very, very ending, but maybe she's talking about the part where she ran and wrecked his whole tear collection. See, 4 out of 10. These people are mean. Senseless with no explanation. People really want an explanation. I do too. I agree, but bump that up to a 6. It's one of the worst episodes of Tales from Darkside so far? Absolutely not. Despite the cult, Jessica Harper, an angel, in the lead role, plot is senseless and with no explanation. Yeah, a lot of people are harping that it had no horror or suspense. There's a little bit of suspense, I guess, because you think he might be like a serial killer or something. Or he might kill her at the end. So there's a little suspense. And considering how many episodes there are that are comedy, I'm kind of surprised people are so mad that this is not more horror. But okay, there you go. Next up, we get a real horror episode, The Madness Room. It's actually scary, and I would say quite a bit better than The Tear Collector. The Tear Collector, I'll stick up for you and give you a 6.
Walk along the harbor, be my Valentine. Still my heart don't keep on beating. You will know where I've been hiding. So be the one I need for a long time. Have an emotional stare of the wrong kind. Without any attention, got plans of aggression. It's so normal, we all know it's normal. Say to yourself, it's normal.